Punishment, written and narrated by Saul, illustrated by Magda, líšková, and scored by Billy McCormack. The fungus has spread across the room like a cancer, mutating, spreading, engulfing anything in its path. A long time ago, the mould once resembled poisoned bunting strung around all four walls, which has now evolved into thick veins of tar with thousands of arteries diverging off and multiplying. Nowhere is safe. A window that once offered a pleasant view of the park has been enveloped and consumed until even light has given up the futile venture of entering. I forget where the window was now. It's been that long. Certain edges of the room have been fully lost to the dark, but other parts still cling on like refugees. There's no apparent source of this light. Pieces of the light bulb still litter the room from when it went off like a grenade. Thick glitter cascaded everywhere in a burst of light. Shards are still dug deep into my skull. That's where I felt it. Elsewhere I accepted the punctures to my flesh, welcomed it. At first, even after the moss had started to grow over, upon a gentle touch, there it was, like reading Braille, a unique pleasure. Occasionally, albeit very rarely, a red light flickers and then whimpers from the corner of the room, as red as a sunset. Oh, it's gorgeous, that red. It emits from the doorless fridge as it coughs to life every so often. The small little bulb inside I'd have suspected to be long gone, but here we are, surviving. Out of the bulb the light comes before having to battle through the bottles of blood that fill the unit. Well, I say blood. It's dried out into a powder now, but the stain in the glass persists with the stubborn red. I always thought of myself as a little photographer, and here I am with my own little dark room. In this hellscape, I daren't even describe the smell. The years seeing the mould and the plants flirting and toying with getting ever closer to me were frustrating. At first, a branch tickled the top of my head at the same time the fluffy moss filled the space in between my toes. That was back when I could have done something about it. But what would have been the point? If there's an eternity on its way, then you best get on with it. I'd have liked to have said it was not long after, but I reckon it was a decade or so of the branch circling my head and then popping my skull open like an Easter egg. Only a few months after the fungal mushrooms pushed up through my toenails like opening a car bonnet. After that, the leaves tickled my moist brain before the mould got to it. Oh, that mould, the armchair, me. When did that all become the same? I always wondered how the plants kept growing with no sun or water, but looking down at my arm wrapped up tight by a thick vine that has curled around my limb like a python, it's become clear. They live off of my life. It fuels them. No wonder my skin has sagged and rotted, exposing the bone and the dark pus that once lied within. I am a compost heap. I haven't moved in centuries. I used to pray for my last breath, and yet I drew that long ago. My body just remains, motionless, still. My eyelids rotted soon after that. I can't even blink. An eternity to be witnessed from the comfort of my own home. But this was all a part of the terms, of course. This is all my punishment. There are certain things you notice with time. At first it was difficult to see, let alone believe. But, like everything, patience reveals all. What else is a man who's trapped, entombed in one chair to do until the end of time? What else can he do than look, bear witness? At first it was at the children in the park, then the mould, and then my eyes started to wander before all energy was lost and my eyes grew still. There was one point that I fixated on. It wasn't even worth describing. It was nothing. So boring I loathed myself for not landing on a better part of the room. But patience is the key here. After, at a guess, 300 years of unwavering, unflinching gaze, I started to see the outline, so faint at first it could be dismissed. But as another 300 years came and went, details started to appear, only to the silhouette, mind you. But gradually, the corner of the room wasn't as empty as it once was. After a century or so chugged along, a face as clear as my pale skin was right there in the corner of the room. A ghastly, ghoulish-looking creature that was enough to make anyone weep. It made me cry tears of ivy vines. I'd been guaranteed eternity. If my body could move at all, it would be shaking in fear. How long have I not been alone? It has eyes made of teeth and a screaming mouth full of bristles that look like they contain the light of 1,000 Suddenly, at that moment, mid-thought, the room around me snapped into another. Over the 1,000 years, my mind had quite literally turned to mush. It took me months to even think of a full thought. So in a flash, I was back to my mouldy room, alone, I was sure this time. I must have been in the other place for what, a day or so? I should have picked up more descriptors. Why was I there? How was I there? Why am I back here? Hundreds of years later, my friend in the corner had returned. My dried-out eyes started to see the detail in his coarse skin. As the years flicked by, more and more details were coming to light. Was he a burn victim? In another flash, the room had snapped again, but it snapped back even quicker this time. It was another day in another place, but now I see I must train my mind to be sharper. For an eternity, you allow yourself to slack. Your mind slow so that the decades pass quicker. But if I wanted to enjoy these little holidays of mine, then I best start taking the long way round. The next 1,000 years were painfully slow. If I still had hair, then I'd have pulled it out. Each second that ticked by felt like a thud in my chest, an internal metronome, counting the hours, counting the minutes, counting the seconds. The other had started to form sooner than before. Frustratingly, he was in the corner of my eye. As the months and years went on, I could see them slowly turning towards me. Wait, are they getting closer? Snap. The room changes, but this time, I'm ready. I absorb the details, revel in them. The mounds of mould and twisted plants were replaced with clean walls, littered instead with a string of fairy lights and a large tapestry or blanket of sorts above a bed. This wasn't my room, yet I remained married to the armchair. So, I just sit in the corner of this room and wait. For what? I wasn't too sure. After some hours, movement from the bed shows, oh, this room is populated. But by whom? I tried calling out, but my body remained uncooperative, as still as a corpse. It was only after the sun shone in through the window that they started to rise from their slumber. I was almost getting excited at the prospect of being seen or noticed. Hello, remember me? But she just got dressed and left, and as much as a passing thought for the stranger in the corner. I couldn't overtly recognize who she was, but it was definitely someone in their late teens, early 20s. The sun batted from one side of the room to the other and began sinking again. She hadn't returned. With another 1,000-year wait ahead of me, the anxiety of it sinks into my shoulders, all before being lifted as the door swings open. She's returned with company, a rather strapping fellow. They're all around each other, connected at the lips. She rips off his shirt and, my goodness gracious, I like where this is going. They almost dance around the room together, littering items of clothing behind them like a trail of breadcrumbs. Hello, my lovelies. Even though the sludge in my veins is stagnant, I've not felt this alive in a millennia. She sits on the desk with her legs wrapped around him as he fumbles for something in the drawer. The heat and tension between them was palpable as he struggled to unlatch her bra. Come on, son, you've got this. Just as the latch came loose and he started to pull the supporting cup away from her breast, the room snapped back to the status quo. Now that was a punishment. Send me back. The centuries danced by as I was racing on the thought of them for longer than their lifetimes. That moment, probably so insignificant to them, they'll be dead and buried by now, but that image lives on in my mind. That's mine now. I feel like a child on the night before their birthday, so much so that I completely ignore the other forming in the room. It was only when the walls flipped again that I realized last time was a fluke. The mould flips into a beige pattern as a double bed is presented, with an old man sat bolt upright, using the wall for support. Oh, how pitiful. For some time the man stares directly at me, yet looks through to the wall, until his jaw opened and he looked shocked, almost with a deep inhale. The door comes crashing open and in waddles 2 toddlers and a woman whose age matches his. "Happy birthday, Grandad!" They yell from their tiny mouths, and he joins in with their celebrations and the cake, without even as much as a passing glance to me. Every 1,000 years, like clockwork, I get plonked into the corner of a room to observe for 24 hours. Yet every time I always return to the decay. There was once that I snapped back at a slightly different angle, only by a degree or so. But it brought something to light. How could I have been so foolish? I always did love souvenirs. Almost like an impact site, the thick veins of mould all sprouted from ground zero. On the edge of the now deflated and collapsed coffee table, a melted, severed head sits, once pride of place, but now rotted into black tar. It's somewhat poetic, with these dark vines weaving through the various cracks and holes in the skull. If I could have only just lost my pride for one moment, my current situation may be a little more comfortable. He still looks just as gorgeous as the day I met him. He always had a way of putting a smile on my face. His once so well-maintained skin is now charcoaled, resembling acidic leather more than anything. After a while, the other fades in. If you give them enough time, they selfishly block the view of my love. I've not seen him in centuries. Please, let me have this. Time slugged along, and he was gone. Yet another 1,000-year cycle later, I'm back to the original orientation. He's right there, yet out of my grasp. After goodness knows how many cycles, a thought popped into my mind. Why does patience allow me to see them? Then a thin red flash illuminated the room, and they didn't have a shadow. It's been many years since that fridge last flashed, a true dying whimper, or maybe just a memory. But it reminded me of my little dark room, my bout at photography. It reminded me of how when you capture an image in the dark, the exposure needs to be extended to let all the information in, thus creating my new hypothesis. There are creatures, beings, in every room, in every corner, but nobody has the patience to see. Some don't even have the lifetime to witness. Each blink could cancel it out, but maybe, just occasionally, people see glimpses of us in the corner of their eye, only to turn and we're gone. But trust me, we're still there. We sit and we watch you live your life, and you're none the wiser that we're watching. This is my punishment, to be forgotten. These plants and their vines are not my chains, they are not my shackles. It's the pain of knowing that no matter what I did to end up here, no matter the pain I caused my victims, no one will know. I do believe that this is hell. Not just any hell, but everyone's. We won't be thought of again. I truly believe that this place is to demonstrate how futile it all is. If hell was a pit of eternal flame, then at least there'd be something to do. I prefer to be burnt alive all day long if it meant I could be out of that wretched room. But then, just for 24 hours, can you see us in the corner? Yes, hello, that's where we are. You're looking, but do you see? Oh, I've waited such a long time for this. Punishment, written and narrated by Saul, illustrated by Magda, líšková, and scored by Billy McCormack.